guys, Emma here from Equality Equine Services. I've got a little cutie here and we're going to see if we can answer some of the questions that you guys put up on the page. So the first one was from Zoe, and Zoe said, what's the pros and cons and difference between bitless and bridles? Okay, so I wanted to run through this. Again, my opinion may not be the same as everyone else's, but this is how I kind of view it and see it and what works best for me. So I'll let rip, and if you like it, keep it. If you don't, chuck it away. So when we talk about bitless versus bit and how that goes, when you finish your groundwork stuff, your horse knows the communication on a halter. So a bitless bridle is virtually a glorified halter. They work similar, and even, you know, some people will probably argue that, if you know, or have a different opinion to that, and that's okay. But to me, they operate no different to a halter. They pull on the side of the faces and stuff like that instead of actually the mouth. So they operate off the head instead of the mouth. Now, with a halter and the bitless stuff, for me, because the horse already understands the groundwork, and I can get, you know, a few things happening from the halter on the ground. When I go to my first rides, I ride in a halter because the communication that we've established on the ground correlates to when I'm on their back. So they already understand if I take the nose this way to bend the head, if I take it that way, bend the head. You know, if I put a little pressure backwards, they understand, you know, to back off, and if I lead out and up forwards, they understand to go forward. So and we'll deal with the pushy pony part in a minute. So the communication is virtually established here on the ground. So then when I hop on their back, that's something they don't have to worry about. So they already can basically understand the communication, where if you put a bridle in, that's something new again that they have to learn about, because it's not something that, you know, they've been dealing with for a very long time. Usually we lead them around and stuff like that. So for me, riding in a halter or bitless is baby talk. It's the first level, okay? And then after the horse, and this is why I also do it. So if this horse here was having fear reactions, so say she was spooking or bucking or running off and that kind of deal, if I had to get her to a point where I had to listen to her or get myself safe, if I bent her and kicked her hindquarters over, I could kind of get her to slow down and take the power out of most things, and that would get me safe. And I would be able to put a lot more pressure on my hands in that halter than I would actually be able to do that in a bridle. Why? Because this is the soft tissues of the mouth. And I want the horse not operating in fear and knowing his communications under saddle and being okay with a rider up here through all three gates, walk, trot, canter. So they should be able to walk on a loose rein and a halter, trot a loose rein, canter, loose rein, slow down from each gate, bend, do a front end, do a hind quarter, you know, do all those things, so that from all three gates in a halter, before I kind of graduate to a bridle. Pardon me. And then in a bridle, I teach them a fair little bit of stuff on the ground and stuff like that. And then I use the halter and the bridle as there's a transition period where I kind of ride with the halter and bridle, because they already understand the halter, but they don't know what the bridle means. So for me, the halter is actually the first point of communication, because they already know it, and you can kind of get the communication right on the ground. Then the bridle usually happens after all of the responses fear responses are gone, and it's just refined communication. Because when I go to putting a bridle in here, I just want to use that much rein or that much rein to turn my horse. I don't want the horse actually, me trying to stop that horse or control that horse by the bridle, because it kind of defeats the purpose. And it's still a pain-based reaction or response. So I'm going to pull on the soft tissues of your mouth until it hurts, and then you'll stop. So it's kind of like, if you don't get your basics right and your basic communication right, really the next level gets really ugly, and then it can create really bad habits for the rest of their riding life. So halter to me is safer for my first rides and assessment when the horse is reacting in fear stuff, and I hope I've prepped the horse well enough that he doesn't have to go into that anyway. But if he does, it's safer and more softer on their mouth. Now, if I've got a trail ride to do and stuff like that, and I know my horse is operating well off my seat and my focus, then if he's in a halter, it doesn't matter. But I'll make sure I've got that bridle stuff happening. I'll make sure I've got the halter stuff happening. And then what I want is, when they're in a bridle, I want to operate so lightly, and I want all the operations to come from my seat anyway, and that's where it heads up to bridleless and bitless. So you're actually bridleless all together. So once I get a horse knowing what the communications are under saddle from my seat, then I can take off the bridle and the halter, and the horse has a fair communication what my body says, you know, go, slow, woo, turn, that kind of deal. So then we get to bridleless riding, that kind of deal. But there's a lot of education that goes in before that. With the bit, I want to know that my horse can listen at a walk with the bit, at a softly, at a trot with the bit, at a canter with the bit. And I don't think we spend enough time going, okay, so can we do this here slowly? Can we walk over there? Can we walk over here? Can we walk over there? The troubles I find with halter or bitless riding people, and some of the worst rearing horses I've had to rehabilitate were bitless, so it's not a solution to you know, a horse chucking its head up or having trouble with the bit. What I found with people that are riding in bitless these days is they don't have very big knowledge of the biomechanics of the horse. So whether you're in bitless or a bridle, you need to be able to know how to engage your horse's core muscles and how to get them stepping through. Here, buddy, you're a bit bored. Just go have a walk around. Yep, go chill. So you need to be able to get them to engage their core muscles and shape and turn and soften around the corners just the same in a halter as you would in a bridle, and just the same as you would, and I would expect that from me riding bitless and bridleless with no halter or nothing on. I would expect the same kind of shape and form, but that takes a lot of education. So what I was getting to is, what I am finding is that the people that say, look, my horse had trouble with the bridle and I was chucking its head and stuff, really are very loud in their hands. So when they go back to a halter, it seems great because the horse doesn't chuck its head anymore, because a halter, they can put up with a fair bit more hand loudness in a halter than they can in a bit. That's why I'll chuck children on and I'll chuck them in a halter, because I actually don't want to wreck my horse's mouths. You know, I don't want them to do that, and the kids can't help but pull on at the wrong time. So anyone who hasn't truly got control of their emotions when they're riding and they're a bit pulley or grabby, I'd chuck them in a halter on my horses, because I actually don't feel like it's fair to rip on their mouth like that when it's not like when they've been taught to be soft, I guess. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm not against bitless. I do all my first rides in halters and stuff like that. I do move up in education and go to refined communication with the bit. And that should only happen once your horse is through all their fear-based emotions and they're ready to listen. Okay? In my opinion. The bitless riding, if you're going to ride with a bitless, make sure you know your body mechanics and you know how to use your legs to shape your horse so that he can turn and be soft in that halter or bitless bridle. And then make sure that when you're leading your horse, if you're going to ride with a bitless bridle, like I was saying before, it's no different to a halter, right? So if you're going to ride with a bitless bridle or a halter kind of setup, if you're leading them and you're hanging off their head, or they're dragging behind, or they're not turning when you ask, and they're kind of like, ugh, when you're just leading them off that halter, expect them to be like that under saddle, because how they operate on that halter, how they respond on that halter, and the communication they know on that halter is exactly how you're going to get up in their saddle. So what I find is people go to a bitless at the start and they're like, oh, it was great, and then he just started to get duller and duller, and I couldn't pull him and move him. And usually it's because we're not really that aware of what we're saying to the horse while they're on a halter. So like there, she's like, pull out there, and I want to graze here. And so usually we'll just kind of let them feed out and graze there and rub here and push there. And that's how they get in a halter when you're riding them. So if you're going to ride in a bitless, be very aware that you're still communicating or getting your rein communication happening while you're leading everywhere. So that happens 24/7 when you've got them on a halter. And the other part is, if your hands are too loud in a bit, your horse is going to have trouble, because it is a soft palate and it is their mouth, and you need to be soft. If you haven't got that communication running in a halter where it's just so soft and stop go from your seat and all that kind of stuff, then it's going to be wishy-washy in a bridle anyway. And then, you know, you're going to feel a little bit on edge and insecure. So I hope that helps, and I want people to know that that's the kind of process that you need to go through, and it's really important that it is all about communication and how much time you spend on your basics with either a bit or a bridle, and knowing your body mechanics, knowing what you're looking for in a bridle. There's plenty of bridle people out there that ride in bridles that I have seen cause a horse very much big discomfort just because of the way they ride an ass too, and they don't know anything about the body mechanics. So what I suggest to you guys is, I always use my legs and arms, my legs to communicate to the body of the horse, and my hands to communicate the direction and stuff like that together, not separate, together, and get to know that and get to know what you're looking for. So I don't care if you're riding either or, but I do care if you don't know the body mechanics of your horse, which makes it better and better for your horse, and makes them more sound in their ride life. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. And you can see this pushy pony, she's going to be the one for the next lesson. And just know that it is a personal choice thing. That's the way I see it. I do my first rides until all the control's out. So if I want to ride out, first ride out on a trail, and the horse is a little bit spooky, then I'll ride out and halter, because I know that I've got that communication down pat. So I'll make sure all that communication is really, really good in a halter before I go to a bit, and then I'll make sure all the slow stuff in a bit is really, really good before I'll actually graduate a horse to just riding in a bit. And then after that, it usually goes, other thing I have to say, when I start riding my babies with a bit, it is wide hands, high hands, and not together and narrow, so the bit doesn't scissor and hurt their mouth. And then usually the progression after that is, once they've got really good snaffle bit work, or just bit work, where they can soften and give lateral and give vertical and really use their body and stuff like that, you can go to not riding with nothing at all, or you can go to a straight bar one-handed riding bit, which is called a bridle in America. But that's a very far along thing for me personally, because it's refinement of communication. So it's when you've got it so good that your whole body, you can just turn and your horse follows, and you're actually really together. Bits should never be used for force, just never. It should be never a tug of war, you know, even though we're all guilty of doing it, and me included. It's just too much softness in the mouth to ruin it, you know. And if that's happening all the time, take it back to a halter, get your basics sorted out, then move up. Alright guys, thanks for that. This is about 15 minutes, so I think I'll shut up. Hope that one helps though, and I know there was like heaps of information spit everywhere, but I don't have an opinion what's one better or another. I have a process on which ones are used, and as long as you know your body mechanics in either or, and you're operating soft in either or, I'm cool. All right, see you guys, thanks.